Every year, one of the most special days for me was undoubtedly my birthdays. This year, I planned to have a small but intimate celebration by inviting a group of friends to my home. Once the preparations were completed, I saw my friends start to arrive one by one. I thought it would be a lovely evening filled with music, laughter, and cake. However, right in the middle of the celebration, I heard the doorbell ring intensely. When I went to the door, I found an elderly woman with a pale face and disheveled hair standing in front of me. Her eyes were sad, as if carrying the weariness and sorrow of many years. "I want him back," she said with a shaky voice. Confused, I asked, "Who are you talking about?" Instead of answering, she examined my eyes even more deeply and said, "He's here. I need to speak with him." When I turned to my friends to ask about her, none of them recognized the woman. However, she began to move further into the house. When she reached the living room, she stared long and hard at the glowing candles on my birthday cake. "He's here," she repeated, and then swiftly left the house. I ran after her, but I couldn't find her on the street. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. My friends and I discussed the strange event, trying to understand what had happened, but we couldn't come to any conclusion. After spending the night, the next day when I shared these events with my mother, she spoke of an elderly woman who celebrated the birthday of her son, whom she lost many years ago on my birthday. Every year, on the same date, the woman visits neighboring houses in memory of her son, looking for him. The incident we experienced that night reminded us not only of fear, but also of the endless longing and love a mother feels for her lost child. I never saw that woman again, but her story comes to my mind every birthday, and I light a candle in her memory. I wanted to celebrate a special day of mine, my birthday. I invited my closest friends to my house, and everything had to be perfect. However, one of my friends had planned a surprise for me. He mentioned some illicit alcohol for the evening. At first, I thought it was a harmless idea. After all, we were all adults just wanting to have some fun. I wanted to throw a big party with all my friends. I planned to organize this party in an old mansion located deep in the woods outside of the city. Abandoned years ago, this mansion, holding numerous stories within its walls, had a mysterious atmosphere. Yes, perhaps it was a cliched choice, but I believed it was the perfect venue for the birthday party I envisioned. When the party day arrived, everything looked perfect. My guests arrived, the music started, and everyone was having a blast. However, one of my friends had prepared a special surprise for me. He mentioned the illicit alcohol. The label on the bottle was faded, and there were words written in a foreign language. Upon taking the first sip, I felt a sweet, burning taste. But as time passed, the effects of the liquid started to show. My surroundings became blurry. The antique items in the mansion seemed to come to life. From the other end of the hall, I noticed shadows seeping out from the walls. Were these shadows the spirits of old tales that took place in the mansion, or were they just hallucinations induced by the alcohol? I wasn't sure. After a while, I realized other guests were seeing similar things. Some were frozen in fear, looking around, while others seemed to be talking to these shadows. My friend admitted he didn't know what was in the alcohol he brought, and he too was frightened. The next day, while everyone else didn't seem to remember the events, I recalled everything with crystal clarity. Was it a dream induced by alcohol, or were they the old spirits of the mansion? I cannot tell. But one thing's for certain. I'll never forget that night and that mansion. From then on, I learned not to throw birthday parties in old mansions deep in the forest. Birthdays have always been special and joyful days for me. However, this year, on my 27th birthday, everything was a bit different. A strange feeling of unease had started to envelop me a few days before. On my birthday, I celebrated with family and friends. But at the end of the day, when I lay down in bed and closed my eyes, I had a nightmarish dream that I could never forget. In my dream, I woke up in an old and abandoned house. The mansion bore the marks of time and neglect. Dust was everywhere, and the walls adorned with old portraits were dimly lit. Pale-faced strangers surrounded me. Each seemed as though they wanted to speak to me, yet their lips remained motionless. I felt paralyzed under their gaze. I began to wander around this gloomy house. Every door I opened led to a different terrifying scenario. In one room, there was a birthday cake with lit candles, but when I tried to blow them out, they wouldn't extinguish. In another room, looking in a mirror, I saw my face had completely changed. The reflection showed an aged, wrinkled face, as if time had rapidly progressed, aging me in mere seconds. In the dream, I tried to escape from this horrifying mansion, but with every attempt, I found myself in another part of the house, and each time, those pale-faced figures continued to watch me. Finally, I reached the mansion's grand staircase. As I ascended, each step beneath me began to crumble. Just as I was about to fall, I woke up from the dream. I spent the night shivering in my bed. By morning, I knew the dream was just a nightmare, but the fear and anxiety I felt were real. From that day on, every year, I made a special wish for my birthdays to remain untainted by such terrifying dreams.